Have you ever had a family member or friend, or perhaps a student or a child or colleague, come to you and say something like, I have something I have to tell you, but first, you have to promise not to get mad? Or have you ever said that to somebody yourself? How does one respond to such a request? It immediately puts you on the defensive, thinking, well, it's my problem if I get mad at whatever you're about to tell me? Well, I imagine a similar sigh or grimace spread across Jesus' face as James and John, these appropriately named sons of thunder, approached him with the request, we want you to do whatever it is that we ask of you. How would you feel if I came to you and said, I want you to do whatever I'm about to ask you? How would you respond? Well, it depends, right? I would give you the world, but there are some things that are simply not mine to give. Well, James and John, I have some good news and I have some bad. This particular request cannot be fulfilled. What a bummer. They thought this was our shot. We were hoping to advance in the world to come. And Jesus says to them, yet you will drink the cup. You will experience this baptism into the death of Jesus Christ. Okay, Jesus, so what is the good news? That is the good news? Well, the good news for James and John, for Julie and Jill, Joe and Jim, for all of us, is that, like it or not, God is not a cosmic genie. There's not some magical lamp that you will someday discover where you get to ask whatever you wish of God. God is not a trick or a magician. God is not a cosmic ATM or a liturgical lottery ticket. I remember one time a good friend of mine whose father had won the lottery. He had hit the jackpot. This was years and years ago. And he made some pretty smart decisions with it, but he said, you would not believe the people who come out of the woodwork and how impossible it is to tell who is really your friend and who just knows that you won the lottery. He was fascinated, terrified, really, of the number of lottery winners who went on to get divorced or go through bankruptcy or go through all manner of tragedy in their lives because they had won the lottery. They thought they could fulfill whatever it is that they asked for, only to discover that that was not the winning ticket that they were looking for after all. Things like this happen in both good and bad ways in our lives. Maybe you've worked on a goal for a very long time in your life. There's such a thing called the post-marathon blues. It could be in almost any area of our lives, but maybe you've worked towards a goal for a very, very long time, and maybe you've even been lucky enough to accomplish that goal. And then what comes? Monday morning. Then what comes? The next thing that we wonder, will it bring ultimate fulfillment, what it is that I am most deeply longing for? And the wise ones amongst us discover that it wasn't the end goal necessarily that was bringing the richness of life and the meaning. It was the process It was the day-to-day details of working towards a common goal that felt like we were working towards something bigger. It was not just the end goal, it was what we were doing every day, all along. So maybe what we think we want most in life is not what would actually make us happy. I think this is what Jesus is saying to James and John. On the one hand, they are saying, Jesus, we want to be next to you. We want to be side by side. And Jesus is trying to help them to realize that if you want to be by my side, it is not up here. It is down here. It is not at the front of the line. It is at the back. It is in service to something greater, in service to one another, that we will find the greatness that we long for. And so if you want to follow Jesus, get in the back of the line. Jesus then points them in the direction of true discipleship. He talks about the cup. He talks about baptism. The cup that he will one day sit around table with them and say, this is my very self. This is my blood. When you partake of this, you're partaking in my suffering. You're partaking in my life. You're participating in my death for the promise of life that is to come. Be baptized into the death of Christ, that you may share in his resurrection. Lose your life, that you may discover eternal life. In a nutshell, Jesus seems to be telling his disciples is that what you pay attention to grows. So pay attention to your attention. Whatever we spend most of our waking hours thinking about, occupying our mental and emotional state, tends to be about all that we can see out in life. Like, if just a silly example, if I tell you to go out and as you're driving about, notice all those yellow cars or the punch buggies. Tell this to a little person and you will get punched in the arm quite often, I can tell you. Suddenly all you can see is yellow cars or punch buggies. Maybe you spend your entire week crafting the perfect fantasy football team with all the stats and figures. You listen to the podcasts, you watch the game, and win or lose, rejoice or grieve. And what happens next? Monday morning comes along. The next day arrives. The next game, the next season. The highs and the lows are not where we find those ultimate joys in life. What you pay attention to grows. Sometimes what we long for most in life, if we're not careful, can leave us feeling disappointed. Sometimes we pay attention to the little, insignificant things that seem so silly when they become so big. Now, this idea of what we pay attention to grows. I want to assign a bit of homework for you this week. Are you okay with some homework? My hope is that a sermon exists not just in the 10, 15 minutes that I'm standing here in front of you, but that there's something that goes with you home this afternoon. Maybe it sticks with you on Tuesday, or even if we got to Friday, we're golden. I want to encourage you this week to be thinking about what it is that you are grateful for here specifically at All Saints. I want you to write it down. It could be something as simple as this beautiful sunshine coming through these windows. It could be the children with which we're surrounded and blessed by. It could be our choir. It could be a nice cup of coffee. What you pay attention to grows. And my guess is that the more time, the more attention that you give to that which you are grateful for, the longer that list will become. I would love to have you share that list with me or with one another. It's not extra credit. I'm not going to grade it, but I would love to hear about it. Here this fall at All Saints, we've been talking about what it means to work together as a team. When we work together, when we take Jesus at his word and become the servant of all, we begin to see miracles in the smallest places. And as we pay attention to those miracles, they continue to grow. I guarantee whether you start with the gratitude list, whether you start with the consideration of your time here at All Saints, the talents that you offer, the financial treasure that you give to support the mission of what we do here, I guarantee as Jesus was directing his disciples, what you pay attention to will grow. What Jesus says to James and to John, he says to us still today. The cup of Jesus' life is offered to us. The cup of his suffering, the cup of his life, his death, his resurrection. The baptism into the death of Christ, that we may live in the fullness of Christ's resurrection. James and John, the good news is not so bad. You may not be able to sit up here with Jesus, but if you want to be with Jesus, come down here. If you want to follow Jesus, follow him to the back of the line.